There's a lot of confusion around what's being called the Trump deal over Greenland. Though the deal apparently underpins the US president's taking military action over Greenland off the table, as well as his U-turn on tariffs for European countries that opposed his mission to take control of Greenland, the details are unclear, to say the least. Following a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Trump described the deal as, quote, the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland. He later went on to say this to reporters. It puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and to minerals. It's a deal that's forever, it's what's called an infinite deal. Mark Rutte was also pretty stingy with details.
Yesterday we came to this understanding that collectively as NATO we have to step up here, including the US. Now, of course, our military will start the planning, but that is something which we are good at. I mean, NATO for 76 years has done this stuff. We have Baltic Sentry, we have Eastern Sentry, we have so many other missions and activities that will be done. And as soon as that is finalized, we will have to look where you have to take the decision. Is it in the North Atlantic Council? Is it at the level of the commanders? We'll see. But the most important thing is not the internal decision making. It is that we protect the Arctic region, implementing the President's vision that we need a safe Arctic region.
Now, it has been suggested that Rutte, on behalf of NATO, has suggested that the US might have sovereignty over NATO bases in Greenland. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen was quick to reject that, saying, quote, we can negotiate on everything political, security, investments, economy, but we cannot negotiate on our sovereignty. Greenland's government was even more robust. This was the territory's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen speaking earlier today.
First of all, nobody else than Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark have the mandate to make deals or agreements about Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark without us. That's not going to happen. In terms of the deal there's been talking about, I don't know what's concrete in that deal either. But I know that we have now a high-level working group working on a solution for both parties. We have said from the beginning in Greenland, we have some red lines. We cannot cross the red lines. We have to respect our territorial integrity. We have to respect international law, sovereignty. We are ready to cooperate more in economics, in other areas, but that's something we have to talk about in mutual respect.
So no one is very clear about the what's going on, what comes next, or what Greenland might have to give up. But despite that, one man seems to want to take credit for lowering the rising global temperature. This was Prime Minister Keir Starmer speaking on a visit to Hertfordshire.
I think you will have noticed that the last few days have been incredibly serious in relation to big things happening on the world stage. And you may have seen, but it is a good thing, that yesterday the threat of tariffs against the United Kingdom was lifted, and now we can start the hard yards of finding a way forward on security in the Arctic, which may seem a long way away, pretty remote, but actually does matter to all of us in terms of the safety and security of our country. And we've got through the last few days with a mix of British pragmatism, common sense, but also that British sense of sticking to our values and our principles.
Is that filmed at Yvette Cooper's house with all the Union Jack bunting in the background? Well, clearly, Keir Starmer also left out about his Blitz spirit. In a meeting with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen later in the day, she had a similar message.
So I would like to thank you for your very strong support. I like the British way of doing things. As you said, you are very pragmatic. You have a cup of tea and then you think a bit about everything. You get the facts on the table. And then you find a way forward, and that is exactly what we're doing now. You are one of our UK, not you, but UK is one of our oldest and most important allies and partners. And we are good friends, the two of us. Yeah. So just to finalize, I think we're gonna get by with a little help from our friends.
That was expert diplomacy from Frederiksen, even down to the bit where she said, the UK, not you, is one of our greatest allies. Because in all honesty, Starmer was pragmatic, but he was pragmatic about British interests, sitting outside of the more public opposition to the US's territorial ambitions that other European leaders voiced. So, what might really have been behind Trump's step down? Well, one option is the bond markets, the massive anonymous traders who have an outside influence over our politics, with the EU owning $8 trillion in US Treasury bonds. That's almost twice as much as the rest of the world combined. The threat of a sell off, as well as the vulnerability of American capital markets to foreign investors pulling out if they don't like the political weather, may have played a much more significant role than diplomacy. Dahlia, do you think Keir Starmer was a real kind of cog in the opposition to Trump here? Or was he like Drake sitting with the basketball team, like, bro thinks he's on the team?
Keir Starmer is much like Drake, is the last person to know that he's no longer relevant, and so continues to embarrass himself out of desperation. I think what we're seeing here that's quite interesting is, and I think a lot of European leaders, Keir Starmer included, they're kind of trying to operate in a world that Trump is at least planning on tearing to shreds. And we saw kind of Mark Carney in his talk to Davos, in his speech to Davos, where Mark Carney kind of recognizes that certainly under a Trump presidency, and depending on what a post-Trump America is going to look like, whether it's going to kind of very much continue within that tradition, or whether it's going to try and return back to a pre-Trump era. But Mark Carney kind of has sort of cottoned on that this idea of this inevitable, inherent US, North America, Europe alignment, that it's going to somehow hold strong in this kind of diplomatic, nicey way. Mark Carney's kind of cottoned on that world is being torn up to shreds a little bit. I mean, him saying that the era of a rules-based international order is over. Sure, the era of rules-based international order within countries of the West is certainly beginning to dissipate. Globally, that rules-based order has never really existed evenly, and which Mark Carney did acknowledge in his speech, to be fair to him. Whereas I think that a lot of NATO, Starmer, a lot of European leaders, they're not quite cottoning on to the fact that in Trump's vision of the world, and of the world that he is trying to curate and implement, there are three powers to take seriously: US, China, Russia. So in Trump's vision, the world is carved up between those three global superpowers. And the EU, as far as he's concerned, is kind of the US's playground. And I wonder, and we see it playing out here where sort of Keir Starmer, it's been a long day, Keir Starmer and the Danish leader there sort of saying, like the British way of doing things, diplomacy, having a cup of tea, negotiating, that's what got us out of this, or that's what changed things in a very minor way. No, it was the very hard economic power of the current existing vulnerability of American capital markets to EU movement. Those are the only levers that now exist. This kind of special relationship, culturalist-based relationship or unifying force between Europe and North America is disintegrating, or at least Trump is trying to accelerate its disintegration. I think Mark Carney has cottoned on to that. I don't think that Starmer and some of the other leaders in Europe have really figured out that is what is happening, and therefore the levers that are pulled need to be changed.